Number 1. Friends. I used to go on camping trips with my best friend Colin from time to time when we were teenagers, up into our late 20s. We both really enjoyed being out in nature and spent what little free time that we had out in it. We never had a bad experience with it until the last time that we went out camping together. Because of what happened on that trip, we never went camping together ever since. We both had taken a week off work. That technically added up to 9 days, including the weekends. Neither of us were married, nor did we have any kids, so we were able to spend as much time as we could to ourselves. And we had a pretty good camping trip planned out. It was in a place that we had never camped before, and that was the most exciting part about it all. It was great to have new experiences in new areas like that. This trip started out like any other trip. We were having a nice time hiking in the woods, sometimes doing a little fishing and camping at nighttime. Nothing unusual happened for the first half of the trip. It wasn't until we went hiking back towards our car that something strange happened for the first time. When we were hiking or camping, Colin and I rarely got out of each other's sight, and we never got out of earshot. We had been doing this for too long to make those sort of mistakes concerning our safety. We also had never gotten lost before, taking maps of the areas when they were available, and marking our paths, so that we were sure to be taking the right way back. We were always very prepared. I'm really not sure how this happened, though. On the way back to our car, we got separated. I didn't think too much of it at the beginning. I didn't expect Colin to stray that far away from me. However, after he was gone for a bit of time, more than he usually would have been, I began getting a little concerned. So I called out for him a few times, wondering where he might have gotten off to. I expected a response from him, but one didn't come. So I called out to him a few more times, hoping to hear from him, but I still didn't get anything back from him. I was sure that I knew which direction he had went off in, so I decided to go out that way and look for him. Colin was not the type of guy to fool around either, so I knew he wasn't playing a prank on me by not answering. But I also hadn't thought that he would have been able to get far enough away from me to not hear me. But still, it was too early for me to assume that something was wrong or had happened to him, so I wasn't worried about that yet. But the more I looked around without finding him, and the more that I called for him without hearing something in reply, I did begin to get a little worried. There were some small cliffs in the area, and it was possible he might have fallen off of one and hurt himself. If he was knocked out, it would be that much harder for me to find him. As time passed and I still hadn't found Colin, I began to get very concerned. I didn't think that I could continue hiking back toward the car until I'd found him, but I was searching quite a bit of area without coming across him, so I didn't really know what to do. As it began to get dark outside, I realized that I had to set up camp. It would be much more difficult finding him in the dark, although after setting up the camp, I knew that I would go out and look for him a little bit longer. However, looking around for him in the dark was even more fruitless than it had been in the light, so I eventually had to give up and go back to the camp. As I was sitting by the campfire, wondering what the hell had happened to my friend, I began to occasionally hear noises around the camp. Several times I thought that I heard footsteps circling my camping area. At first I thought it might have been Colin, so I called out to him. However, I didn't get a response any time, so I knew it wasn't him. That just made me nervous, thinking someone else might have been lurking around out there. However, after hearing the sounds for just a little while, they were gone. I went to sleep that night, very worried about my friend, and a bit scared about what I had heard earlier. I was finally able to get some sleep, and was somehow able to sleep through the night, despite everything that had been going on. The following day I went searching for Colin again. I really didn't care about getting back to the car a day or two late. I didn't want to go on and leave my friend out there in the woods, so I spent the entire day looking for him again. If something was wrong with him, or if he was injured, then I assumed that he couldn't get very far away from me. But still, I was having no luck finding him. After not finding him at all the second day, I once again made camp that evening. Like before, I heard sounds around the camp that night. It seemed like, once again, someone had been walking around outside of the camp. I really didn't know what to do. All I could think of to do would be to try to find my way to find some help, to try to find Colin. I wasn't doing a good job of it on my own, and if too much time had passed, he could probably die if he was injured. I didn't feel good about leaving without him, but it was the only choice that I had. I was able to get out of the woods and get myself to the closest police station that I could. It was all a terrifying process, but one that I really needed to go through. Colin was found, and was barely alive when he was found. He had been attacked by something, but we never did find out what. When his life was saved, he had no memory of the attack, and never recovered any memory of it over time. So sometime in that small period of time that I was out of earshot with my friend, he got attacked by something that we may never know what it is. I'm only fortunate that I didn't get the same, because then I was able to go out and get us help. If I also got attacked, the two of us could have died out there in the mountains. Number 2. Ride. I grew up and I lived my life in an old European village. I don't feel comfortable mentioning where it is, though, as I still live here. But this happened when I was a teenager, and it has scared me ever since then. There weren't really any places to work in the area that I lived. Mostly it was old houses, spread along the side of the road. There was a petrol station in the area, but it was a family-run place. So when I was ready to get a job, I had no chance of getting one there. I had to end up getting a job that was a bit away in a different village, and most of the time I would ride a bike there and then home. The countryside was pretty vast, with moors stretching out as far as one could see. My dad was a writer, and he worked mostly from home. My mom, however, was a chef, and she spent a lot of time away from home in the city. We had a second home in the city, and I would sometimes spend time there with her. However, I much preferred being in the village, and spent most of my time there. This happened once when my parents were both together in the city. My dad was going to be gone for a few weeks, and I had the house to myself in the meantime. But rather than spend much time at home, I actually piled on some work hours. I had a job in the nearest town, working in a retail store. So a lot of strange things happened on that day. First, even though I was working during the day, a co-worker of mine didn't make it into work. I was offered to work the closing shift, and since I didn't have anything better to do, I accepted it. I only occasionally worked the close, and it was nearly 11 p.m. before I got to leave the store. The second strange thing that happened was that my bike chain was broken. It wasn't fixable, and no stores were open for me to buy a new chain from. Plus, my manager had already left by then, so I wasn't able to ask for a ride home. So although it was going to be a pain in the butt, I had no choice but to walk home. I had ridden my bike many times along the road that led from town to the small little village that my house was in. This, however, was the first time that I had ever walked it. I didn't know how long it would take me to do it. It was very dark out there on that road, unless there was a moon out. On this night, it was only like a half moon, so it wasn't as bright as it could have been. But it didn't bother me that much because I wasn't really afraid of the dark. I was probably around halfway home when I heard a car coming up behind me. I turned around to look, and I saw a pair of headlights heading my way. I almost never saw anyone driving along that road late at night, and I was hoping that the driver might offer me a ride the rest of the way home. When the car got close to me, the driver did pull over to the side. I had kept walking, but the driver called me over to the driver's side door. I walked over there and said hello to the man driving. The guy asked me where I was going, and I let him know it was just to the next village. The road would have gone through that way anyhow. He asked me if I needed a ride. Originally, I wanted to say yes, but there was just something off about the guy. There was something about him that made me feel uneasy. He was pleasant enough, I suppose, but a combination of his look and demeanor just struck me in a negative way. So after thinking about it for a quick moment, I decided that I would rather just walk the rest of the way. I made up a lie, telling them that I was actually out for a walk to get some exercise, but I appreciated the offer. For a few moments, the man kept asking if I was sure. He kept reiterating that it was no problem for him to give me a ride. The fact that he kept pressing it even made me more comfortable with my decision to not accept the ride. So after making sure I was okay for the 4th or 5th time, the guy drove on his way. I made the rest of the way home after a really long walk. I was so exhausted by the time I got home that I immediately fell asleep and didn't wake up until really late the following day. I didn't have work the following day, so I just stayed home and watched TV and read. But it was a news story that caught my attention. Apparently in the town I worked in, a hitchhiker was found beaten pretty badly. An eyewitness account had a description of both the car and the man that I had encountered driving away from the scene. I mean, the description was vague, but accurate. The description of the car, however, was spot on. Days later, the driver of the car was arrested, and his face was shown on the news. It was the guy who had offered me a ride. The whole thing had sent a chill down my spine. It also made me think that I was pretty fortunate to trust my instincts involving the guy. Even though I had only communicated with him for a brief moment, I had enough information to not accept the ride. Number 3. Figure. I had this unexplainable experience once while exploring out in the woods. The thing is that the area that I was exploring in was an area that I had been in many times before. Nothing like that had happened before, and nothing like it happened since. So I really don't know to this day what to think about it. My family owned a very large amount of rural property when I was growing up. We lived in a house smack right in the middle of all that property. Most of it was just hills and trees, and nothing was ever done with the property. But it made for a wonderful area for me to hang out in while I was growing up, so I liked to explore as much as possible. I did this all year long, no matter what the weather was like. It was just nice to be out in nature. I was 13 years old when this story takes place. This was on a pretty lazy summer day. School had been out for a while. There was nothing on TV, and I couldn't find a book that I wanted to read, so I decided to go out and do some exploring. There was a creek that I liked to go down to, and occasionally hunt for salamanders, and that seemed like the thing to do on this day. Right away, something felt different about this particular hike. I couldn't really tell what it was, but I almost felt like I was being watched. It is that strange, almost unexplainable feeling that one sometimes gets when they least expect it. There were tons of no trespassing signs around all the fences that surrounded the area, and they were barbed wire fences. Plus, out of all the houses in the area, there weren't any that had kids or anyone young enough that they would be out hiking on someone else's land. All the times that I went out exploring, one of the reasons that I did it was because I liked the solitude that I got from it all. I got to the creek and went searching for salamanders. I never lost that strange feeling, however, so I really didn't get too comfortable at any point. A cracking sound got my attention. I looked up, thinking that I would see a squirrel or something like that. Instead, what I caught was just a small glimpse of something moving away behind a tree. I had only seen it for the briefest of moments, so I wasn't sure what I had seen, but I thought it was a person. "Hello?" I called out to the figure. "Is someone over there?" I didn't get an answer, so I decided to slowly approach the tree. I was a bit nervous, thinking that someone might be there watching me, but as I looked around on the other side of the tree, there was no one there. I thought that what I had probably heard was a squirrel, and what I had seen was just my imagination. Still, that feeling didn't leave me. And what is worse, for a while, I kept hearing other noises as well. My stay at the creek wasn't turning out to be as fun as it normally was. From the feeling, the noise, and from what I thought I saw, I was just not able to enjoy myself. I heard another sound, and it caused me to look up and across the creek. Far on the other side of it, I once again saw a figure standing there. But this time, it stayed there for more than just a short moment. I was positive that time that I had definitely seen something. This time, however, I didn't feel an urge to call out to them. I just didn't feel good about it at all. If someone was on the property, why did they keep moving out of sight? I could only surmise that it was because they were up to something no good. The uneasiness helped me decide it was time to walk back to my house. I was nervous as I was walking back, and I kept looking over my shoulder to see if anyone was following me, but I didn't see anything back there each time that I looked. I was over halfway back to my house, still glancing over my shoulder over and over. After one glance, I turned for it again, and I was stopped right in my tracks. I caught a look at the figure, and this time it was right in front of me, on my path back to the house. Also this time it didn't hide really quickly. It kept in my line of sight for quite a while, and thus I got my absolute best look at it. I don't know what it was, really. I mean, to that point, I had thought it was a person that I was only seeing occasional glimpses of, but the reason I hadn't been able to make out any of its features beforehand was simply that it didn't have any features at all. What was looking at me, standing in front of me, was nothing more than a living shadow. It was completely black, with no other features at all. Even though it had no eyes or anything, I could still tell that it was staring at me, and that made me really apprehensive. I could feel it looking at me, and all I could do was stand there and look right back at it. Finally, after what seemed like forever, it ducked behind the tree, like it had been doing before. I was scared to walk further, but I needed to do so in order to get home. Slowly I walked that way, waiting to see it again. I came upon the tree, and looking behind it, didn't see anything there either. It was scary. I think not seeing it might have been scarier than seeing it. After seeing it that last time, I rushed home as quickly as I could to get there. I thought about it and eventually decided not to mention anything about it to my parents. They didn't believe in supernatural things, and other than that one experience, neither did I. They would think it was my imagination, or that I really saw an actual person out there. I didn't really want to have to deal with either of those, so I kept it to myself. But I still think about it every now and then. I don't know what it was, but I never caught another glimpse of it. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. First I want to shout out to my paid Patreon subscribers, beginning with my 2 VIP members, Chiamerah Cat and Pixie Hopper 8. My other members are Heidi H, Chronic J, Tracy Sellars, and newest member, EricaOdd, who has also written some 2-sentence horror stories for the channel. Thank you all. Sorry this video took a little while to get out. It won't be so much longer until my next one. I just really wanted to get this out on a Wednesday, since I'm supposed to be doing that country stories on Wednesday thing, and these are obviously country stories. So that was my plan, to try to get it out. So I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that it was worth the wait. Also, my birthday is tomorrow, but we're sort of celebrating it today with a steak dinner over at my mom's house. By the time this video is posted, that will have already happened. And now I would like to thank and mention my free Patreon members: Venikins, Rose Metro, Woofer McWooferson, Cindy Cleveland, Vanapira Rayne, Stinking Ooze, William H., Alien Unicorn 13, Kathryn Lynch, The Bama Guy 334, Michael Vasquez, Bonnie Lynn, Collet Bond, Krista Pike, Prince UVA, HF Creations, Bonnie Gibbs, Linda Moore, DJ Lira, and Evil Black Cat. And if you like this video, please leave me a like and a comment to let me know what you thought of it. Also consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you want narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the email in the description. And most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check on your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.